Story 1. The unseen presence in the daycare depths. At 21, I was scraping by in a demanding job as a maintenance and custodial worker at a daycare nestled within the sprawling campus of a Catholic school and church. The facility, a cheerful facade during the day, buzzed with the laughter of children, but my role extended far beyond their playtime hours. I was tasked with a litany of responsibilities: disposing of trash, rearranging furniture for special events, performing preventative maintenance, organizing supplies, cleaning the facility, caring for equipment, and ensuring a safe environment by reporting any suspicious activity. The job was grueling, made more so by the fact that I worked alongside only one other person, Bob, an older man who served as my supervisor, but frequently left early, leaving me to close up alone. It was a crisp November evening, just past Thanksgiving, when the events that would haunt me unfolded. Bob, true to form, departed early on a Friday, leaving me with a checklist: clean the classrooms, pack away the Thanksgiving decorations into crates, store them in the basement, and bring up the Christmas decorations to prepare for the festive season. The daycare was deserted by 6:30 p.m., the children and staff long gone, and the building was cloaked in the stillness of night. I locked all the doors, ensuring I was the sole occupant, and began my tasks. The basement, accessible via a creaky staircase, was a labyrinth of shadows and clutter. Used primarily for storage, it housed outdoor toys, plastic slides, toy cars, and climbing structures, stacked haphazardly during the off-season. The low ceiling forced me, at 6 feet 3 inches, to stoop in certain areas, and the lighting was abysmal, with only a few dim bulbs casting eerie pools of light. Small windows which admitted daylight were now black mirrors reflecting the night. The air was thick with the musty scent of old cardboard and dust, and the space carried an unsettling aura, as if it resented intrusion. As I hauled the Thanksgiving crates downstairs, eager to finish and escape to my weekend, a sound pierced the silence. A child's voice, faint but unmistakable, followed by a muffled giggle. My heart lurched. I was certain I was alone. Dropping the crate, I scoured the building: classrooms, the indoor playroom, the art room, the bathrooms, but found no trace of anyone. The laughter persisted, intermittent and elusive, echoing from an indeterminate source. Reluctantly, I returned to the basement door, my flashlight beam slicing through the darkness. A soft shuffle emanated from below, raising the hairs on my neck. Convinced a child had somehow wandered into the basement, I descended shouting, "Who's down there?" My voice echoed off the concrete walls. In the storage room, my flashlight caught a toy car rolling slowly across the floor, as if pushed by an unseen hand, before stopping abruptly. The air grew oppressive, the silence suffocating. I called out again, my voice trembling, but received no reply. Desperate, I checked inside boxes and crates, though logic told me no child could have sealed themselves inside. A chilling sensation washed over me, a feeling of being watched yet utterly alone. Then a sharp clatter shattered the stillness, a plastic object striking the floor behind me. Panic surged and I fled upstairs without looking back, my pulse thundering. At the top, I paused only to hear a faint childlike whisper drift from the darkness below, its words unintelligible but laced with an eerie intent. I slammed the door shut, fumbling for my phone to call Bob. He advised me to contact the police if I suspected a child was trapped. Though I doubted a child was present, the alternative was too terrifying to contemplate, so I dialed 911. 2 officers arrived, their skepticism palpable as I recounted the events. We searched the basement together, finding only crates and toys, with no sign of the plastic object or any intruder. The officers departed, clearly believing I'd overreacted, but I was too shaken to care. Over the following weeks, I avoided the basement, delegating tasks to Bob when possible. The whispers and the toy car's movement haunted my dreams, and by mid-December I resigned, unable to face the basement's unseen presence again. To this day, I wonder what lingered in those shadows, watching, waiting. Story 2. The spectral voice in the city apartment. At 25, I live a solitary life in a compact city apartment, my days consumed by the physical demands of construction work and a rigorous gym routine. The grind often leaves me exhausted, my evenings spent collapsing into the comfort of my couch. One late autumn night, after a particularly brutal day, I stopped for Chipotle, too drained to cook. Sprawled on the couch, I devoured my meal while half watching TV, the week's fatigue pulling me into an unplanned nap. I awoke around 11 p.m., disoriented but snug under a blanket. Realizing I'd left my contact lenses in, I shuffled to the bathroom to remove them, intending to crawl into bed. As I crossed the threshold to my bedroom, a clear female voice called my name from the living room, its tone soft yet piercing. The sound was so vivid it sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. I spun around, heart pounding, and flicked on the living room light. The room was empty, but my vision, blurred without contacts, strained to detect any movement. "Who's there?" "Mom?" I called, my voice unsteady. Silence answered. I retrieved my glasses from my nightstand and searched the apartment. A small space with a combined kitchen and living area, a bedroom, and a bathroom. There were few hiding spots and no one was present. To quell my unease, I called my mother, waking her and confirming she was miles away. Chalking it up to exhaustion, I climbed into bed, though sleep proved elusive as the voice echoed in my mind. Just as I began to drift off, the voice returned, this time from within my bedroom, calling my name with chilling clarity. I bolted upright, my eyes locking onto a shadowy figure at the foot of my bed. A tall, humanoid mass with long, flowing hair and indistinct, distorted features that seemed to writhe in the darkness. Terror gripped me as I screamed, fumbling for the light switch and knocking over my lamp. When the light flooded the room, the figure was gone. I searched every corner, under the bed, in the closets, behind the dresser, but found nothing. The next day, I confided in a coworker who suggested I was overworked. Determined to prove it was a fluke, I returned home, but the unease lingered. That night, as I lay in bed, the voice called again, now accompanied by a faint rustling, like fabric brushing against the floor. I froze, my breath shallow, as the shadowy figure reappeared, this time closer, its form more defined. A woman in a flowing dress, her face a blur of shifting shadows. I lunged for the light, and again it vanished. Desperate for answers, I researched the building's history, uncovering a decades-old story of a woman who died in the apartment under mysterious circumstances. The revelation chilled me, but I convinced myself it was coincidence. I installed motion sensor lights and kept a flashlight by my bed. Yet the voice persisted sporadically, always at night, always accompanied by that shadowy form. Eventually, I moved to a new apartment, unable to endure the spectral presence. I tell others it was a hallucination, but the voice's clarity and the figure's haunting silhouette remains seared in my memory, a mystery I may never resolve. Story 3. The Week of Paranormal Disturbances. At 27, I share a two-story house with my brother James in a serene suburban neighborhood, our lives grounded in routine. That is, until a week of inexplicable events shattered my skepticism. It began on a mundane evening as I stood at the kitchen sink, washing dishes before bed. Without warning, a blue plastic cup, perched securely atop a cabinet, crashed to the floor, bouncing several times before settling. Startled, I stared at the cup, baffled by its fall from a stable position. I replaced the cup and retired to bed, dismissing the incident as a fluke. Yet as I lay in darkness, a faint glow seeped through my closed blinds, casting an otherworldly light across the room. Too comfortable to investigate, I rationalized it as a new streetlight bulb and slept. The next day, a storm rolled in, the house rumbling with thunder. Alone while James was at work, I heard another crash from the kitchen. The same blue cup lay on the floor despite my careful placement. As I stood in the kitchen, pondering the cup's defiance, a creak echoed from the floor above, my bedroom. My heart raced as I called for James, only to recall he was absent. I ascended the stairs, flipping on the light to reveal an empty room and clear closets. That evening, I discussed the events with James, who was unaware of any disturbances. The night passed uneventfully, but at 2 a.m., I awoke to a deliberate tapping on my bedroom window. My blood ran cold. My room was on the second floor, inaccessible from outside. I hesitated, then lifted the blind, finding only darkness. Convinced I'd heard the sound, I rushed to James's room, my panic palpable. He listened, skeptical but supportive. The next night, the disturbances escalated. As I prepared for bed, the blue cup fell again, this time rolling across the counter as if guided. Later in my room, the glow returned, accompanied by a low hum that vibrated through the walls. Desperate, I invited a friend who dabbled in paranormal investigation to examine the house. Using a digital recorder, we captured faint whispers, indistinct but undeniably human, emanating from the kitchen. The friend suggested a restless spirit, perhaps tied to the house's history. I researched and discovered the previous owner, an elderly woman, had died in the house years prior, her death attributed to a fall in the kitchen. The revelation unnerved me, but the disturbances ceased after a week as abruptly as they began. 3 weeks have passed without incident, yet that week transformed my worldview, leaving me wary of the unseen forces that may linger in our home. Story 4. The Nightmarish Hotel Encounter. During a solo road trip from New Hampshire to Florida, I stopped for the night at a dilapidated hotel off a desolate highway. The building was a relic, its peeling paint and sparse parking lot, home to just 2 cars reflecting its neglect. The lobby, with its garish furniture and faded wallpaper, mirrored the apathy of the front desk clerk, who processed my check-in with robotic detachment. Exhausted from hours of driving, I entered my room, brushed my teeth, and sank into the lumpy hotel bed, eager for rest. As I drifted towards sleep, a sharp knock at the door jolted me awake. The bedside clock read just shy of midnight. I approached the door, peering through the peephole, but saw only darkness, as if it were blocked. No shadows blocked the light under the door, so I cracked it open, finding an empty hallway. Puzzled, I bolted the door and returned to bed. Moments later, another knock echoed through the room. I sprang up, checking the peephole again. This time, the hallway was visible but empty, and I opened the door, finding no one, and stormed to the front desk to demand answers. The clerk, unfazed, stated that only one other guest was in the hotel, offering no further help. Frustrated, I returned to my room, donning headphones to block out further disturbances with a sleep relaxation video. Hours later, I stirred, my gaze settling on a corner of the room. There, faintly illuminated by my phone's glow, stood a towering humanoid figure, nearly 10 feet tall, its head grazing the ceiling. My heart raced as I lunged for the lamp, but when the light flooded the room, the figure vanished. Minutes later, it reappeared, its long arms shifting in the shadows. I flicked on the lamp again, finding nothing. The cycle repeated throughout the night, the figure appearing and vanishing with each light switch. Desperate for answers, I approached the clerk again at dawn, who casually mentioned the hotel's history of odd occurrences, dismissing them as old tales. Researching later, I learned the hotel was built on the site of a 19th century asylum, rumored to house restless spirits. Unable to endure another moment, I packed my belongings and fled, checking out with a silent clerk and driving to another hotel where sleep came without interruption. The memory of that towering figure lingers, a spectral enigma that haunts my travels. Story 5. The Eyes Beneath the Floor. As the youngest of 4 siblings in a modest household, I occupied a cramped bedroom on the first floor at age 13. The room, barely large enough for my bed, featured wood flooring, 2 floor vents, and 2 ceiling vents, creating an oddly ventilated space. One evening, while doing homework on my bed, lacking a desk, I heard a child's laughter, clear and unmistakable. Assuming it was a sibling, I checked the living room and kitchen, but found everyone upstairs. Returning to my homework, I remained vigilant, the laughter echoing in my mind. Just as I began to relax, the sound returned, now a prolonged giggle emanating from within my room. Convinced a sibling was pranking me, I followed the sound to a corner where it seemed to originate from a floor vent. Kneeling, I pressed my ear to the grate, hearing only silence. Curious, I peered into the vent, only to freeze as a pair of eyes stared back, wide, unblinking, and distinctly inhuman, glowing faintly in the darkness. I screamed, scrambling away as my mother rushed in. The eyes and laughter had vanished, leaving her skeptical, blaming my panic on sleep deprivation. She allowed me to sleep in her room that night, a reprieve that extended for a week. The following nights I returned to my room, but the laughter persisted, always from the vent, accompanied by faint scratches, as if something clawed at the metal. I began taping the vents shut, but the sounds continued, growing more insistent. Desperate, I confided in my eldest brother, who dismissed it as imagination, but agreed to inspect the vents. We removed a grate, finding only dust and cobwebs, yet the laughter returned that night, now accompanied by a whispered voice calling my name. Researching the house's history, I learned it was built over an old well, sealed decades prior after a child's tragic fall. The revelation chilled me, and though my mother eventually forced me back to my room, the disturbances ceased after that week. For the next 4 years, nothing paranormal occurred, but the memory of those eyes remains a haunting specter, a reminder of the unseen that may lurk beneath our feet.